My sister doesn't want my husband to speak to her or greet her when we visit, because to her he's still a stranger. I'm a 30-year-old woman, newly married and now also a new mom. You would think this should be one of the happiest stages of my life, but I find myself trapped in an increasingly strange conflict with my 24-year-old sister. She has never been particularly sociable. She doesn't have many friends, she rarely brings anyone home, and over the years she has always kept her distance from anyone I dated. Even so, I never suspected her aversion would become so intense, especially toward my husband. When I brought him home for the first time to meet my family, I noticed she was a bit cold, but I let it go. She had always been like that. She never showed open rejection, and even when I asked her before the wedding if she had any problem with him, she told me she thought he seemed nice. I even invited her to be my maid of honor, thinking we were on good terms. But last week something happened that changed everything. My husband went to drop off some food at my parents' place. My sister still lives there. He knocked, went inside, and found her in the kitchen. She told him my parents weren't home, and when he tried to hand her the food, she insisted he leave it in the garage, even though she was standing right there in the kitchen. He tried to make some small talk, just a casual comment about the weather. Suddenly she exploded. She told him never to speak to her again and stormed off in anger. She was so abrupt and aggressive that when he came back home visibly upset, my mind filled with doubts. For a moment I wondered if something had happened, if he had been inappropriate somehow, even though he has never given me a single reason to doubt him. I called my sister immediately to ask what had happened. She didn't answer. I texted her, and she only responded after I bombarded her with calls and messages, desperate to fix whatever was going on. She finally answered. Her words were blunt and harsh. She hates him, she has always hated him, and her only boundary is that he must never speak to her again. In the 7 years we've been together, I can count on one hand the number of times they've interacted, and it was almost always just a polite hello. I pressed her for a reason, something specific he had done or said. The only thing she repeated was that she simply doesn't like him and doesn't need a reason. This is affecting me more than I ever imagined. My family has always been very close. My 29-year-old brother and I would always stop by my parents' house unannounced to cook or just hang out. My parents love having us around. I told my sister it would be strange for my husband not to even say hello when we visit. Her response chilled me. She said she was sick of having a stranger in her house. 7 years, and to her he's still a stranger. I promised her that I would no longer send my husband alone to my parents' house, because I didn't know she saw him that way. She said that wasn't enough. She wanted me to guarantee that he would never speak to her, ever. I told her I would do my best to keep them apart, but I warned her this would affect my child, her nephew, because my husband won't feel comfortable leaving the baby with someone who despises him. And honestly, neither do I. I don't know what ideas she might put in his head someday. And this would inevitably hurt my parents, who adore their grandchild and cherish the time they spend with him. She accused me of playing the victim and trying to trample over the only boundary she has ever asked for. I'm torn between trying to keep family peace and not understanding how things reached this point. As for how my parents are handling this, I already told them what happened. My mom wants to sit down and talk with my sister, but she keeps avoiding her. She's always busy, tired, or asking for more time. My dad is recovering from a heart attack, so I don't want to stress him further. He just says to let it go, that she'll eventually calm down. So I stopped insisting with him. My husband means everything to me, loving, loyal, and he has never given me any reason to mistrust him. I even doubted my own instincts when this happened, but my sister herself confirmed he didn't do anything wrong. I can't understand how a simple casual comment could trigger such a furious reaction. I realized my brother has also dated people, but he never brought anyone home. I, on the other hand, have only introduced 2 boyfriends in my entire life, and only when I was sure there was a future. I've always been careful. As for my sister's mental health, she has always had a bad temper. She explodes over small things and rarely apologizes, even when she later admits she was wrong. Like that time she accused me of stealing her shoes and then found them in her car. But she had never gone this far. Now I'm here, not knowing what to do, heartbroken by all of this. Update 1, to clarify. The only reason I even considered the possibility that my husband might have done something wrong was because I work in the healthcare field, an environment where we are taught. Analyze every side of a situation. My first instinct, honestly, was that she was overreacting for no reason. But I always try to be fair, and I couldn't help wondering if there was something deeper that made her say what she said. Both my husband and my sister-in-law insisted that nothing had happened, and I believe them. I'm acting under that assumption and trusting what they told me. Growing up, my brother was undoubtedly the golden child. My dad was obsessed with having a son, always talking about his legacy and how important his boy was. Honestly, that version of my father isn't the same man I know today. He's worked very hard to change, and now treats all of us equally. When I was 10, things were very different, but today he's a caring father to all of us. My sister, on the other hand, was always my mother's favorite. My mom said it openly and seemed to want a calm, delicate, princess-type daughter, something I never wanted for myself. I always wanted to make my dad happy, tried to be as tomboyish as possible, and absolutely refused to wear those frilly dresses my mom picked out. Luckily, my relationship with my mother has changed over the years. Now we're on much better terms than when I was a child. I was always the odd one in the family. My siblings and I didn't have much connection until we reached our teenage years. It probably wasn't until we were all around 14 or 15 that we started discovering shared interests and finally became closer. My husband was thrilled to marry me and become part of my family. My parents have always treated him like a son, and he has told me many times that he feels more at home with them than with his own family. He's the youngest of 4 brothers, with a 10-year gap between him and the next one. Always the odd one out, always left behind by his older brothers. He even told me how excited he was to have a sister-in-law, since he had never had one before. And because he didn't have a real connection with his own brothers, he really valued the idea of having that sibling bond through marriage. That's why all of this has completely thrown him off. It has genuinely affected him, and I feel absolutely awful for even allowing myself, even for a moment, to think he might have done something inappropriate, when deep down I knew he hadn't. I just needed to get to the bottom of it to understand why everything suddenly felt so tense and strange. Update 2. I think now we finally have some clarity on the situation. My sister announced that she had a reason for all this distance and coldness, but that she didn't want to say what it was. My dad, always the peacemaker, simply said, "Well, then that's that. We're not going to force anyone to share anything." But then my sister suddenly changed her mind and said, "Fine, I'll tell you why." And that's when she dropped her accusation. According to her, the first time she met my husband, he asked her about a guy, let's call him Mr. L. She said he asked how he was doing. Then my sister said, "Yes, I know you read my diary. The boy I liked. The boy I wrote all my private thoughts about. The first day your husband met me, he asked about him, and that told me everything I needed to know about him." I was completely shocked she said something like that. First of all, I didn't even know she had a diary. And even if I had known, I would never invade her privacy like that. I had a diary once, and when my cousin read it, she mocked me non-stop. I know how horrible that feels. I would never do that to my sister. At first I was stunned. Then I started feeling angry as I realized she was making things up at this point. Let me piece this together. She met my husband 6 years ago. We had already been together for a year before I introduced him to my family. Then, 2 years ago, she went abroad for a year, something related to university. A friend of mine, who had started her studies later and was in the same program, went on the same trip. I recognized the name of the handsome professor my friend talked about afterward, Mr. L. When I asked my sister if it was the same university professor, she said yes. So I asked her directly, "How could my husband have asked you about someone you only met 2 years ago when he met you 6 years ago?" She went silent for a whole minute. It was like her brain was loading. And then she exploded at me, saying I didn't understand how hard it was to have a stranger in her house, and stormed off in anger. It breaks my heart to think my son is going to grow up without really knowing his only aunt. But I can't fix this. She invents problems, tells lies, and blocks any hope of a real conversation. I admit I wasn't always the perfect sister. Growing up, we had a lot of dumb arguments, silly fights over the TV remote, over food, etc. But I felt that in recent years we had grown much closer. We sent each other memes, made jokes, traveled together, went out to dinner or lunch. She was my maid of honor at my wedding. When my son was born, I had an emergency C-section with complications and spent a week in the hospital, and she visited me every day. For months afterward she checked on me every single day during those difficult, surreal postpartum weeks. There is still a part of me that hopes this can be fixed. But if she is willing to invent that kind of story just to push me and my family away, and refuses to communicate sincerely, I don't know what else I can do. For my own peace of mind, I asked my husband if he even remembered ever asking her about some Mr. L. He wasn't confused, he simply didn't recognize the name at all. And to answer what some people might wonder, no, my husband and my sister never dated. I know that for a fact. The places where he studied and worked are far away from where we grew up. And honestly, with the strict way we were raised, we didn't really go out much. My husband is a different race from ours, he is black and we are Asian. But I would like to believe my sister is not racist. My ex was Asian and she didn't like him either, but we broke up 6 months after she met him, so she barely interacted with him. My family is very mixed, even in my grandparents' generation there are many mixed cousins. And in fact, my sister gets along just fine with my cousin who is half black and half Asian, and with his wife who is black. As for her mental health, I've mentioned her anger issues before. I've suggested therapy or some kind of evaluation, but she wants nothing to do with it. She's an adult, and as long as she doesn't harm herself or others, ultimately it's her decision. But none of this makes things any easier. Update 3. This morning I talked again with my dad about the situation. He told me he had tried to reach out to my sister once more, but she kept avoiding the conversation. I reassured him that he and my mom are always welcome in my home. But I was honest, I won't be going over as often while I feel there are real safety concerns for my son and my husband at their house. My dad said he understood, which was a relief. My mom, on the other hand, is very upset about all of this, especially with my sister for what she did. She actually sat her down and asked her how she would feel if someone treated our brother the same way she's treating my husband. That set off my sister's fury. She threw a tantrum and accused my mom of trying to guilt-trip her. But to me, that was a clear sign she knew she had crossed a line. After all, if you did nothing wrong, why would you feel guilty? Some people think my parents should kick her out of the house, but that's not possible. She just finished university and is looking for a job, so she can't afford to move out even if she wanted to. As angry as I am, I can't wish homelessness on my only sister. We were never the closest growing up, but we always managed to be there for each other when it really mattered. As furious as I might be, I can't abandon her. Some have brought up the racial angle, but honestly that's not the issue. In my family I have 27 uncles and aunts, yes, my grandparents were very loving, and my family is incredibly diverse, black, white, Hispanic, Asian, Filipino. If you can think of a background, it's probably somewhere in our family tree. So I never believed my sister's behavior had anything to do with my husband's race. These days she just seems angry at everyone. She's even getting along better with my brother, or at least making an extra effort. He told me she confessed that she feels like he's the only one on her side, and that everyone else is against her. But he made it clear, to both her and me, that he isn't taking sides. He's not going to change how he interacts with any of us and wants to keep his relationships with both of us open. But no matter how complicated and painful all this is, I'm trying to navigate it day by day. My priority is keeping my family safe and at peace, and I still hope that with time things can improve between all of us. Update 4. Last week, my brother called me out of nowhere, which was strange because we usually just text. He sounded a bit nervous, so the whole thing felt serious. He said he needed to talk to me face to face, just the two of us, without my husband, and that it was about our sister. He had talked to her, and she had confided something about everything going on. He wanted to stay neutral, but even he had a limit. Apparently, my sister had a complete breakdown. She had been drinking, something she rarely does, and she started crying uncontrollably, saying she had ruined everything and that she was a terrible person. And then she told him the real reason she hates my husband. 2 years ago, when she was studying abroad, she was going through a very difficult time. She felt isolated, homesick, and was having trouble with her studies. She started having panic attacks and couldn't sleep. In one of her lowest moments, she called me crying, telling me she felt like she was falling apart. I was very worried and didn't know how to help from so far away. But I stayed up talking or video calling her late into the night. My husband knew everything that was going on, and one week, when I was sick in bed, he answered the call for me. Before anyone says it, yes, I knew this happened and I knew what they talked about. My husband was only trying to encourage her, and that was all. I trust him, and there is nothing he could have said that could be misinterpreted. But my sister did. Maybe it was her vulnerable state, but she developed feelings for him. She misinterpreted his kindness as something more. She began giving those calls a deeper meaning, even the messages he sent her from my phone. She convinced herself that there was a special connection between them. She even wrote about it extensively in her journal, not the diary she mentioned earlier, but a personal notebook she kept abroad to process her emotions. The story about Mr. L was completely made up. She improvised it in the moment because she needed to give a reason, since she couldn't admit the truth, that she had developed an inappropriate crush on her sister's husband, and that she had been carrying 2 years of resentment because of it. My brother told me she has been torturing herself with guilt and shame for these 2 years, watching me be happy with my husband while feeling like she was betraying me just by having those feelings. She convinced herself that avoiding him was the right thing, but at every family gathering, every time he was kind to her, she felt worse. The day he dropped off the food was apparently her breaking point. He had had a particularly bad week, work issues, and was feeling like a failure. When he tried to make a casual comment to her, she simply exploded. All that guilt and self-loathing came out as anger directed at him. At least now I think everything has been resolved in some way, even though it's not what I wanted to hear. I'm relieved to finally have a real explanation, that she wasn't just inventing things or being cruel for no reason. We can rule out the idea that she was completely out of her mind, but it doesn't make it much better, because falling in love like that doesn't speak of someone fully in control of their mental state. My brother begged me not to confront her directly. He told me she was even thinking of moving in with an aunt in another state, that she felt she had destroyed the family, and that everyone would be better off without her. He is genuinely worried about her mental state right now. When I got home and told my husband, his reaction surprised me. He was genuinely sad for her, and also a little worried that I might think he had said something that crossed a line. On one hand, I understand why she has been acting this way, and I do feel sorry for her. But on the other hand, I'm angry that she allowed this to destroy our family relationships instead of talking to someone, a therapist or even to me. My parents still don't know the real reason, and I don't know if I should tell them. My mom keeps insisting that there needs to be some sort of progress in reconnecting with each other, but I don't want to expose my brother, and I think this is something my sister should tell them herself. My husband thinks we should give her some space and maybe suggest family therapy later. He says he is willing to talk to her if she ever wants to clear things up, but only if that's what she wants, and only if I agree. Update 5. After my last update, I decided to follow my husband's advice and give my sister some space while we figured out how to move forward. I didn't reach out to her, didn't try to force any conversation, and tried to focus on my son and get back into a more or less normal routine. That lasted exactly 3 days. On Tuesday morning, my mom called me in the middle of what sounded like a panic attack or something like it. She told me my sister had been acting strange all weekend, barely eating, staying in her room, and when she came out, it looked like she had been crying. Mom tried talking to her several times, but my sister insisted she was fine, just tired. Then on Monday night, my mom heard her talking on the phone in her room, arguing with someone. She couldn't catch much, but she heard my sister say something like, "I can't keep living like this. Maybe it's time to tell her everything." Mom got worried but didn't want to listen further. This is where everything becomes absolutely insane. On Tuesday morning, apparently my sister woke up with some kind of new determination. She went into the kitchen where my parents were having breakfast and announced that she needed to tell them something important about why she had been so upset. My sister told them about her feelings for my husband. Fine, up to that point, honesty was necessary. But then she also confessed, in quotes, that 3 months ago she had contacted him directly without my knowledge. She supposedly got his number from my mom's phone when she was helping her with something, and sent him a message asking if they could talk privately about family matters. My husband had never told me any of this for one simple reason: it never happened. My husband has no record of this, and she also has no records of sending those messages. When my mom called to tell me, of course I asked if it was true, but he was just as shocked as I was. And given my sister's history of inventing things, I knew I was right to believe my husband. After that, I called my parents again to tell them my husband's version. They also spoke directly with him, and he told them there were no messages and that it was all a lie. My parents were furious with my sister for lying and making things up again. The worst part is that my sister admitted once more that she had made it up, but at least she confessed she did have feelings for my husband. But it gets even worse. After confessing everything, my sister apparently had a complete breakdown. She started screaming that she had ruined everything, that she was a horrible person, and that maybe it would be better if she disappeared so everyone could be happy. My mom said she was hyperventilating, saying she should never have come back from abroad, that she ruined everything she touched. That's when my mom decided to call me. I went straight to my parents' house, leaving my son with my husband. When I arrived, my sister was locked in her room and refused to come out. My dad looked exhausted, and my mom was still crying on and off. Total and complete family crisis. I knocked on my sister's door and begged her to talk to me. She finally opened it, and I barely recognized her. My mom was right, she hadn't eaten, and had slept very little, if at all, for days. She immediately started apologizing, saying she knew I probably hated her now and that she deserved it. I don't even know how to explain this. My sister has been living in an alternate reality where she believed my husband might leave me for her, despite the fact that years have passed since those calls, and he's barely had any contact with her. My husband came over that afternoon after I called him and told him everything. My sister was still in her room, but she could hear us talking. When he asked if she wanted to have a conversation to clear things up, she came out looking absolutely ashamed. She apologized to both of us, but especially to him, for putting him in an impossible situation. She admitted she had hoped he might reciprocate her feelings, and that when he didn't, she had struggled with the rejection along with the guilt and shame. My parents want her to go to therapy, and as long as she lives under their roof, it's not so much a request as an imposition, which I think is absolutely necessary. It's not just about my husband. She has always been a little strange, in quotation marks, and I think she could benefit enormously from therapy and improve the entire family dynamic. The strangest thing is that I almost feel sorry for her. Living with unreturned feelings for your sister's husband for 2 years must be torture, even if it's my husband. I just hope my parents can convince her to go to therapy. Meanwhile, we will continue with some family distance, especially with my sister. Update 6. I know a month isn't enough for major progress on my sister's situation, but she has been attending therapy for 2 weeks, and my parents believe there are signs of improvement. For starters, they've suggested she stay away from my husband until she can better manage her expectations and feelings. There is still a lot she needs to work through, and I think it will be months or even years before we can say she is okay. But it's progress that she agreed to go, even under my parents' pressure. She seems willing to try and is finding some positive things in seeking help. Since she must stay away from my husband, and we also want to maintain some distance, I've only talked to her by phone. We try to visit my parents when she's not home so we don't complicate things further. Everything else in our lives is fine, and don't expect another update from me soon, unless things get weird again.